Good morning, grandkids. Let's continue with our story that I'm writing about a young wizard Dorkly who lives in a land far, far away. This is chapter 13. After Wizard Gorman and Dupree had left the court, headed with Dorkly to his rooms in his tower, the king sent a guard and a servant to his own chambers at the side of the court. He told them to set 3 comfortable chairs and tables before the hearth and to light the fireplace. The evenings were beginning to be chilly. The king, Dermis, and Mandy soon followed, and Conley told one of the guards to have a servant bring them something to eat and drink. Conley was watching Mandy as she seated herself, noticing how plainly she was dressed. She had on a pale blue cotton dress with very little trim and no jewelry. Her red hair was combed simply, but waved past her shoulders. Her face, though, was lovely, with blue eyes, and color to her face without all the makeup that most women wore. When the guards and servants had left, Conley spoke to Mandy. "I hope your trip to the palace was not too tiring. When I sent the guards, I should have sent a carriage." No, she said. "It's okay. I'm doing okay, really." And she gave him a smile. "May I ask the 2 of you some questions? I hope I won't sound too overbearing. I just want to get to know you and how you got together." "Of course, Father," Dermis said, as he and Mandy looked at one another. "We met at a bookstore I was shopping in. I was waiting at the counter to pay for my books, and she was in front of me, waiting with hers, and we talked for a little bit." And Dermis looked at her and smiling. "Another day I saw her sitting at a sidewalk table drinking tea. I had to stop and ask her if she remembered me. She did, and our friendship grew. Finally, I asked her to marry me." Conley turned to Mandy and asked, "Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your parents?" "Yes," she answered quietly. "I'm 19, but both my parents died about a year and a half ago. They were out in Moat when the weather turned really bad. They were trying to make their way back to the shore of the bay below the palace when a big wave hit them and they capsized." The tears slipped down her face, and Dermis tucked an arm around her as she continued. "There were a few on shore that saw it happen, and when they never swam in to the beach, a couple of men took a boat out to get them, but they were never found." The king said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Mandy." "Thank you." She wiped her eyes and sat up straighter. "Thankfully, the house was paid for, so I still had a place to live, but no income and no other family. I finally had to sell my home, and I rented a small hovel." She wiped her eyes some more and then went on. "I had thought about seeing if I could get a job as a clerk in someone's store, or teaching some kids their numbers, or something. Or I could even be a seamstress," she included with a smile. Dermis said, "Afterward, I bought a tiny house there, and that's where we were living when the guards came. I hadn't really figured out what to do after that." "Well," the king said to Mandy, "you won't need to do any of that. Let's get a wedding planned for the 2 of you and get you moved in here. There's certainly plenty of room." He smiled and rubbed his hands together. "We'll figure these things out later, I guess. Right now, it's getting a little late. Maybe we should probably call it a night." He turned to Dermis. Son, do you have anything to ask me or about or thoughts to share? Yes, Dermis said. I'd like to ask you about the tower of rooms farther back in the palace with the windows that look down the hill and out over the ocean. Is it empty? I've loved that tower and wished I lived in it for quite some time. Do you think that would be a possibility? If you want it, it's yours, of course. And Connolly beamed. He was happy that they wanted to stay here. I will have some servants run back there and tidy up for the night. They can start the fireplace and leave some things for you and Mandy. You just as well sleep there rather than try to go all the way back to Longport. It's way too late. Then tomorrow they can really fix the place up for the two of you. Thank you, Mandy said. Thank you, Father, Dermis said. I appreciate how you're taking this. It's okay, Connolly said. You know I'm thrilled about. Well, besides having a daughter-in-law, and he turned and looked at Mandy with a wink, having a grandchild. Things are going to come alive around here, he said with a grin. So the evening passed as they talked. Dupree was lying in bed, hands behind his head, wondering what else he could do with all the empty space that he would now have in the towers. Dorkly was tucked into the chair on the top of his tower, wondering how his friend in Longport was doing with the enchanted cotton squares that he had left him. Othello was at a party dancing the night away. But Gorman, the old wizard, was lying awake in pain, wondering how to tell the king about his own problems. So that's the end of the story today. Next time, we'll get into what's wrong with Gorman. So in the meantime, you can wonder about that. And I will see you next time. All of you be good. Be sure and come back for the rest of the story. And we'll see what else is going to happen. Goodbye, grandkids.